Hello and good morning to everybody. Thanks very much for joining our live webinar this morning. As you all know, today's session is going to be about Express Yourself, which is actually the first part in a series of webinars about using the expression language in Informatica Cloud. Now, for a lot of you who aren't actually familiar with expressions and the expression language that comes with Informatica Cloud, there's actually a huge amount of functionality that is actually hidden and locked within step 5 of the mapping editor, as you're actually able to do, you can use over 150 different functions, which range from string functions to mathematical functions. And for today's part of Express Yourself, we will be focusing on the date conversion functions. So we're going to be looking at how to actually convert dates from string representations, okay, and different formats of string representations, and then finally also how to convert actual date values into string representations, so you can make them a bit more human readable. Okay, so let's have a look at dates. So the first part that we'll be looking at is dates. For the next second part, we'll be looking at strings, so that will actually be in a different session, and then finally regular expressions. So if you do have any suggestions on any specific types of expressions, please let me know, and I can consider putting something together for one of these live webinars. Okay, so dates. Let's jump straight into the exercises. So before we do these exercises, you're going to need either some address data, preferably in a flat file. Okay, so I actually have a flat file that I'm just going to bring up onto the screen now. Okay, and in that flat file, I have a set of dummy data, just loads of just random account data of different businesses in the UK. Now, more specifically, the most interesting field that we want to look at today is going to be the last contact date column. Now this column, I actually have a string representation of a date, and that date is in the day, okay, month, year, and then time with hours, minutes, and seconds format. Okay, so that is day, month, year. Now, straight away, I mean, if you're coming from the US, you have a completely slightly different way of doing it, where you do month, day, and then year. So that can sometimes cause some confusion when you're actually inputting data into Salesforce. So let's have a look and see what type of problem that actually causes. So if I, for instance, just left everything exactly as it is right now with this string representation, and I log into my Informatica Cloud account, okay, and I actually have a date conversion service that I'm going to be using for all of our exercises today. So let's just open up that conversion and then jump to step 5 of our field mapping. Now I'm going from a flat file, okay, and I'm actually going to put that flat file into a Salesforce account object where I actually have a last contacted date field. Okay, now literally this field is going straight from the flat file straight into Salesforce.com. And if we look at the type, it's actually already been set as a date time type. Now this is quite significant, because what Informatica Cloud will do is it will automatically take that string representation, and it will then actually look at it and say, alright, let's convert this into an actual date object and then insert that into Salesforce. Now you can control this. Okay, so if I, for instance, went in here and said, let's change the type of that last contact date. I'll go all the way to the end, and we just change that last contact date into an end string. Alright, then we say OK, and then let's save this task. Okay, so I'll save that task, and now let's just execute that, just to have a look and see what actually occurs in Salesforce, just to get an idea of what type of results you might get from doing something where you take just a string literal in its format without doing any checks or conversions straight into Salesforce. Now, that has come through with 0 failures, so it's all worked perfectly. Okay, And if I then go into Salesforce, and I look at that last contact date, let's just refresh that field. Okay, see the new value. Now, if I'd left the string exactly as it is without any verifications, Salesforce actually assumes that this date is the 7th of April 2001. Now, that looks great. It doesn't look like anything's gone wrong there. Everything looks like it's worked without any problems. Alright, so we may carry on and think to ourselves, well, there's actually no problems here, the dates are all correct. That would be a dreadful mistake. So let's go and open up the original file, and I'm going to look at the original data, and we're going to look at Hamleys. So that's the piece of information we're looking at in Salesforce right now. And if we look at that address data, excuse me, the date, it's actually a day, which is the 4th of the 7th, so it's actually the 4th of July. Okay, 4th of July 2011, and that date has now actually come across incorrectly into Salesforce. So how do we fix that? How do we actually take this and correct that? Alright, so this should actually be the 4th of July instead of the 7th of April. So let's jump back into Informatica Cloud and see how we can ensure that this doesn't happen to our data in the future. So I'll go back into my date conversion. Let's open that up and edit that task, and we'll go to step 5, the field mappings, and now let's go down to that last contact date. And we've got several options available to us. Okay, now I'm going to show you a really quick little shortcut instead of actually using an expression, so you can use this as well if you want to, instead of going the expression route, where you go edit the type and we say, okay, we want this type to be a date time type. Now that's how we had it originally. Okay, now there's something extra that we need to do here. If that date time type for the last contact date is set, what it means is Informatica Cloud will automatically convert those dates into the actual date time type for you. Now this is only half of what you need to do. You first need to set that type, okay, and the second step you need to do is you actually need to go to the actual file connection that you've set up to the CSV file and set the format of the date. So if I just jump back to the source, step 2, and I open up that connection for my Informatica Cloud folder where my flat file is living. If I hit edit that connection, I can then see there is actually a field called date format. Now date format allows me to set what is the expected format of these dates that are actually coming through my flat file. So this is a very nice, quick and dirty way to do this. So we know it is actually a day, month, year, hours, minutes, seconds format. So we can find that, and then we have it. Day, month, year, hours, minutes, seconds, and it's got the standard separators and then the forward slash separators. So we could say, okay, cool. Alright, save that, and we would be done. We could then actually go into this field mapping and then execute the mapping, and we would see the correct data coming through. So let's do that quickly. I'll save that, run date conversion. Okay, let's just... Okay, so we'll just wait for that task to complete. Date conversion runs through. Okay, and what we should now see is that all of our dates have actually come through correctly. We go back to that Hamleys of London, refresh that. We should see the 4th of July, not the 7th of April, if our formatting has worked correctly. I'll just refresh that, and there we go. 4th of July, and now we know that our dates are coming through correctly. Okay, so that's great. So that's a nice, quick and easy way to do this without loading expressions. Obviously that's not the purpose of today's session, so let's have a look at how we would do that with an expression. So I'm going to go back to my date conversion service and navigate to step 5 of the actual task. So I'll just open step 5 of that task, field mapping. Okay, and now we're going to actually change the type of the CSV file, and we're going to make it just a standard string. We don't want it to be a date time. Let's make that a string. Okay, now we can start playing with this inside our expression editor. Now, to access an expression editor, all you need to do is either drag the field into the actual target, Okay, and then once you've got the field there, you can just click on the actual target value and the expression editor will pop up. Now the specific expression that we're going to be using today is first going to be toDate. Okay, now you can find this expression by navigating on the function screen on the left hand side, and if we look at conversion and we look at toDate, we will then get toDate just placed into the editor window, and then we'll get a short description of how to actually use that function. Now this particular function expects a character string. Okay, so the first thing it expects is actually our actual date and the representation of a string. So it's expecting this value to come in the form of something like, 17th of 4th, 2007, and then some hours, minutes, and then seconds. Okay. All right, so that's how it's actually expecting a date will almost look like. So we actually just need the last contact date field in here. So I'm going to drop that last contact date field, and then the next value we need to provide is, so we have a comma just to separate the two arguments, and then we need to provide a format of how this date actually looks. Now this format is essentially just a pattern for how the data is coming through in the string. So we can work out what type of values to use in this pattern by just opening up the help guide. So you can click on the question mark in the bottom left hand corner and the help guide will appear. Now what I always do is I just hit search and straight away I type in the function that I'm looking for. So I'm looking for toDate, hit enter, and then the first result is toDate and isDate format strings. So when you open that up, you will actually get a nice view of all the different types of codes and format strings that you can use. Okay, so there are quite a lot of options available to you. And then if you scroll to the bottom of all of these explanations, you will get some examples of how to actually use these codes. So if I chose, a certain type of format string, how would the data actually look in the real world? Okay, so we're specifically going to be looking at, we just need day, month, year, hours, minutes, seconds. So I know that that's just day. I then have a forward slash. We then have month, another forward slash, 4 Y symbols for the year. We then have a space. Okay. We then have hours in a 24-hour format. We then have a colon separator, minutes. So that's M and I. We then have another colon and then SS for seconds. Okay, so let's just recap that one more time. So we have the actual function that we want to call toDate. The first value that we pass in is the actual last contact date field. We then have a comma separator to designate a new argument. We then have the actual pattern of how the date actually looks. So first value is a day, then a forward slash, month, forward slash, year, space, hours, minutes, seconds. Okay, and then we close off that expression with a close bracket. Okay, so we're now ready to actually run this function, and we can just validate that just to make sure it's valid and we've made everything correct. Okay, and we can hit OK again. Now let's actually save this and then execute the integration. Okay, so that is now run, and if we open up our Informatica Cloud account, and we'll stick with Hamleys since we're playing around, and straight away last contact date is now actually maintained. Still the 4th of July as we expected it, and we can now use the toDate function in all sorts of other interesting ways. So I hope that's been interesting. toDate function. Alright.
So the next function that we're going to look at is going to be the the toChar function. Okay, so toChar is when we actually take an actual date, such as the numerical representation of a date. Okay, so this is something that that computers would typically be working with and understanding, and that's how it actually represents a date. Now we want to be able to convert that numerical or machine representation into an actual string representation, so it's human readable. Okay, so we do that with the toChar function, and just as before, what we can do is we can actually build an expression inside Informatica Cloud in the mapping section. So let's open up one of my services here. I've got date formatting and jump to step 5, and then we just scroll down to that specific function. So right now we've been playing with the last contacted date, okay, where we've got our toDate field. What we're now going to look at is another field I've created called formatted last contact date. Now inside this field I have an expression, and let's actually break down how I've actually gotten to this expression you see in front of you. So there's actually a bit of nesting. So what we're doing in here is we're taking expressions and we're putting the results of those expressions into another expression. Okay, so it's a nice, quick and easy way to get the results of a certain function and then pass those results on to another function and then continue the pattern. Okay, so for toChar, let's just ignore everything I've gotten here for now. We'll just cut that out for the time being. I'll just keep that on a notepad on the side. And again, to find toChar, we can go into our functions list here. Now, toChar should be in conversion and then toChar. Okay, so it takes a given number, converts it into a character string. Now, looking at the syntax, all we need to do is actually pass in either a single value, which is a numerical value, alright, or what we could do is we could pass in two arguments where the function changes. So it's either going to be an actual date parameter and then an actual formatting of the actual how we want that date to be represented as a character. So exactly the same type of thinking that we used when we went from a toDate, where we took a string representation of a date and turned it into an actual a date object. We're using the same type of idea for that formatting. So let's get started. So we said, okay, let's take my date and let's imagine I have a date called, current date, okay, and we then have a format for that current date. We want it to look nice and human readable with some words, so we can actually see what the actual the month is called, what is the day of the week, instead of using just digits. So to get that formatting, we can open up the help guide, and I need to constantly remind myself of what these codes are. So let's just go in there and let's just find, we can use the toDate actually as an example. And we can open that up, and then we can use the formatting strings. So if we want, for instance, the 1st of July, on a certain year. Okay, so let's actually use numerical numbers. So let's first use a DD for the day. So we'll drop in DD. Okay, then we have a space, then we want the actual the name of the month. Okay, so name of the month we can find as, let's have a look here, so name of the month. Alright, so we actually put in the entire word month, so I'll drop that in after the space, and then we want let's see, the 1st of July, etc., 2011. So we'll need the year now, so just for the year values, and we could also put the day of the week. So let's say Monday the 1st of July 2011. So let's actually find the actual name of the day it is of the week. So day of the week should be, let's see, name of the day. Okay, there we go, that looks good. So let's go for the full word day. Okay, so it's going to be Monday, let's type in the word I'm not sure if that'll work. Let's just see if we can get away with it. The 1st of, or 4th of July, 7th of July, 2001. And that is actually our format. So we've now actually created a pattern for that date. So just to recap, your incoming date value will be, as the first argument, then a comma, and then the actual pattern of how you want that date to be represented in a string format. Okay, now if we fast forward a bit here, and I'll come back to this particular function, and we use my expression I had originally, I actually am using the familiar toDate function that we've just been using. So what I'm doing is I'm converting the string into an actual date. Okay, so it actually is becoming a numerical representation of a date. All right, I'm then actually taking the result of this function. So toDate is actually going to give me an actual value, and I'm actually going to use that value inside my toChar function. Okay, so we're kind of doing something that's a little bit backwards here, I guess, but it's more to prove the point, to show you how you can actually nest these functions within each other. So we've got toDate, okay, and then finally we've actually got our formatting string. Okay, so day, then the day, month, year, alright, and then we're pretty much done with that. So let's validate that, just to hope that we've got everything right first time. Nope, I have not got it right, so let's have a see what it's not happy. Okay, so it's unhappy with the fact that I have the word the inside that date. Okay, so we can work around that though, it's not a problem. We'll just leave it out for now. Okay, and let's just validate that. Okay, so now it is okay with that. So now if we wanted, for instance, to put in the word the inside there, or if I wanted to add something to the beginning, I could then use the concatenate function. So concatenate would actually let me actually glue other pieces of strings to that string that's actually going to come out of the toChar function. Actually, we'll be looking at that in the next series, actually, and then in part 2 of this Express Yourself series. So I'll make sure to add that into our exercises for the next week. Okay, so validate that. That's okay. Let's hit OK for that, and then save our task, and then fire off the task. So we've got some date formatting that is going to come out of this. Okay, and that task has completed successfully. So let's have a look at the results of that. So I don't actually have any formatted last contact dates at the moment. And when we bring that up, we now have Monday, 4th of July, 2011. Okay, so you can now use that function to pretty much format dates in any way you want. And that is pretty much wraps up our session for today. So we've had a look at toDate, toChar. I know that a lot of these sessions we go quite slowly, so I hope that it was helpful and that you did get an understanding of how to use those functions. We will be looking at strings and regular expressions in some coming episodes, so stay tuned and thanks for watching.